On May 26, 1996, at approximately 2 p.m. Eastern Time, CART's fate was sealed.
And we have a crash in turn 4. A crash approaching the green flag, and many cars are involved. Well, something has obviously gone wrong.
Championship Auto Racing Teams, founded in 1979, was the dominant series in American open-wheel racing until this year, when the Indy Racing League began. A breakaway series designed to return the sport to its roots, chock full of American dirt track drivers, and ran exclusively on ovals. In virtually any other scenario, the IRL would go nowhere and fail almost immediately. But it had the upper hand over CART right away, simply because of who operated it. Tony George, president and CEO of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The US 500, scheduled directly against the 1996 Indianapolis 500, had none of the tradition, attention, or reverie of Indy. Its main selling point was its lineup of drivers, and how much more skilled and qualified they were compared to the drivers south of the state line. Nearly all of the promotion for the race revolved around the drivers, attempting to create a mythos around them and treating them like modern gladiators. This would have been a little easier had guys like AJ Foyt, Mario Andretti, and Rick Mears not just retired within the past few years. Not that Foyt would have been there. The fierce Indy loyalist is the only CART team owner to jump to the IRL for '96. But before the most qualified field in American open-wheel racing could even reach the green flag, they came together and blew apart in Turn 4. Bob Varsha said in his pre-race monologue on ESPN that drivers have a saying,
"When the green flag drops, the talking stops."
But on this day, he couldn't have been more wrong. Perhaps the most embarrassing moment in auto racing history set the tone for the remainder of the split, and the US 500 would never be run on Memorial Day weekend again. CART's place in the pecking order has been firmly established. It might be better than the IRL for 364 days out of the year, but it will never surpass the Indy 500. Of course, behind the scenes, what really mattered for the viability of CART was its teams. Chip Ganassi Racing, Bobby Rahal's outfit, Team Green, and most crucially, Team Penske. As long as the series keeps its marquee entrants and their big money sponsors, it'll be able to survive. But with each passing month of May, the money would longingly glance south. There was no way around it. Sponsors wanted to race at Indy. And in 2000, the dam broke.
To the winner of the Indianapolis 500, pal.
Indeed, 24-year-old Juan Montoya wins the 84th running of the Indianapolis 500.
Chip Ganassi Racing, with driver Juan Pablo Montoya, came back to Indianapolis and won. Pretty soon, every major CART team would follow suit, not moving to the IRL full-time, but still running at Indy. By now, CART has become a publicly traded company, and with shareholders comes the pressure to expand and increase profits, something that Roger Penske isn't a fan of. As quickly as the stock climbed to a $34 high in 1999, it fell back to earth, landing at just over $20 at the end of 2000, close to its initial $18 valuation. So, perhaps looking for some international investment, CART would head to Europe for 2001, running races in England and Germany, complementing the series' existing races in Japan and Australia, and ultimately somewhat replacing their round in Brazil, which was cancelled after new municipal leadership in Rio de Janeiro reviewed all government contracts. Not everybody was pleased with the move to race in Europe, especially sponsors. A few weeks before the race in Germany, Bert Kremer, marketing director for Kool, the primary sponsor of Team Green, was quoted by ESPN as saying, "We don't care about more and more international races. We care about racing in the United States." All right, Bert. You want a new American race? You got it. Since its inception, the IRL had been racing at a new breed of racetrack. High-banked, mile-and-a-half ovals, built throughout the late 1990s by NASCAR to replicate the success of Charlotte Motor Speedway. CART's oval adventures were reserved for either large superspeedways of 2 miles or longer, or relatively flat ovals like Milwaukee and Gateway. But as the IRL's star continued to rise, with close racing energizing its fans, CART decided to give their style a go, and thanks to interim CEO Bobby Rahal's close relationship with Eddie Gossage, scheduled the Firestone Firehawk 600 at Texas Motor Speedway for April 29, 2001. 2 days before the race, Sylvester Stallone would try to bring CART to the masses. On April 27th, the same day that practice began at Texas, Driven hit theaters. The movie featured what you'd expect from an auto racing movie: several ludicrous crashes, including a hellacious accident in a fictitious race in Germany in which Christian De La Fuente's character, Memo Moreno, was struck by another car while flying through the air and was sent in a ball of flame, I'd say at least 20 feet high, through a tree line and into a lake near the track. At the same time, audiences across America watched the protagonist and his main rival set aside their differences to rescue Memo seconds before a ruptured fuel tank caused the entire lake to explode. The real-life kart drivers began to realize that something was off about Texas Motor Speedway. The IRL had been running at Texas since 1997, the same year that they moved away from turbocharged engines and began running naturally aspirated V8s. Meanwhile, CART continued to run turbochargers. The fastest IRL track by far from 1997 through 2000 was Indianapolis, and the fastest qualifying speed at Indy in that span was achieved by Arie Luyendyk, who posted a pole run of 225 miles an hour in 1999. The fastest kart qualifying speed came a year later, when Gilles de Ferran qualified at California Speedway.
On the qualifying run, 2 laps to go, 4 miles. Adrian Fernandez is well down in the field, second in the points, 5 behind this man, Gilles de Ferran. Parker already suggested flat all the way around. First lap for Gilles de Ferran, 241.428 miles an hour. That breaks Mauricio Guzman's record, that breaks the closed course record, and that puts him on the pole.
All this to say, the kart cars were significantly faster than the IRL. The previous December, Team Rahal and driver Kenny Breck tested the track, despite the radically different conditions compared to what April would bring. According to a Racer magazine article recapping the whole event, they only ran a handful of laps in cold and windy conditions with a car that wasn't properly set up for the racetrack. Even still, they ran north of 220 miles an hour. Outgoing kart chief steward Wally Dallenbach Sr. was quoted by Robin Miller having said, "I just don't know that our cars can run here. I just think they're going to go too fast." Despite his concerns, CART pushed on. More tests were held closer to the race date, and speeds had reached 225 miles an hour. Those who tested were telling the sanctioning body that the cars were too fast for the track. But again, CART pushed on, and soon April 27th arrived. I want to reiterate that the fastest lap at the most recent IRL race at Texas back in October, set by Jacques Lazier, was 216 miles an hour. The fastest lap in CART's first practice, posted by Tony Kanaan, was 233. G-force, short for gravitational force equivalent, is used to measure a sustained acceleration that causes the perception of weight. So, for example, if you're standing still on the ground, not moving at all, you're experiencing exactly 1 sustained G. If you're moving very quickly, especially through some sort of corner, you're gonna start to feel the G-forces. G-force is most often associated with fighter pilots who are capable, with a lot of training and specialized equipment, to withstand up to 9 Gs for a very short time while staying conscious. Race car drivers do not have this training or equipment. In first practice, the kart field is experiencing around 4.5 Gs, thanks to the combination of speed and high bank turns at Texas. They're dancing right on the edge of what a person can withstand over a sustained period of time without blacking out, and since the backstretch takes almost no time at all to zip down at these speeds, they're feeling this force for a majority of the lap, without adequate time for their bodies to recover. When the drivers emerge from their cars after first practice, many are disoriented. Patrick Carpentier vomited, though at the time that was chalked up to an unrelated illness. In the Racer article, Oriol Servia elaborated on what he felt. I remember, and this is before even feeling dizzy or anything, just being on track. During practice, you would feel the G's and all that, but this was the first time a guy would slow to go to the pits, and everything was a close call. You couldn't react fast enough. For some reason, the brain, at least mine, was not processing fast enough to adjust to what was coming at me at that speed. Then we realized it wasn't the actual speed of going 230 average at Texas, it was like the brain was not getting enough juice to process normally. I remember it like it was today. I was trying to look up far ahead like I always do on ovals, and I still didn't have time to anticipate what was happening. The brain wasn't processing it, that was the bottom line. When we started doing longer runs, we all realized that there was something really wrong. It wasn't until the second practice session that the apprehension in the garage was fully validated. Mauricio Gugelmin, one of the first to raise concerns about the track during testing, crashed in turn 2, but his car slid all the way down the backstretch and into turn 3, where he hit the wall again. Robin Miller described it as a crash for the ages. This is, to my knowledge, the only available footage of the crash, since ESPN didn't have a camera pointed at Gugelmin when it began, but they had plenty of time to get one on him given how long it lasted. The next day, the third and final practice session commences, and rookie Nicolas Minassian is starting to feel off 15 laps into his run. The French driver has never raced on an oval before, so he's been assuming that any weird physical feelings are just par for the course on ovals. He feels like his head is being squished into the side of the cockpit, but he's trying to convince himself to keep going. He thinks it's a personal failing of his that he can't run this track and be fine like he assumes everyone else is. But eventually, his better judgment wins. He says over the radio, "I don't feel too good anymore. I'm going to pass out," and pulls into the pits. The combination of his engineer Bill Pappas praising his effort and his dizziness exiting the car would help him realize that it's not just him. If anyone else in the field believed that, Cristiano Damada's crash surely snapped them out of it. Kathy Lauterbach, PR director for Damada's team, Newman Haas Racing, overhears several drivers' concerns and takes them to CART's medical director, Dr. Steve Olvey. In Olvey's book, Rapid Response, he says that the drivers were Tony Kanaan and Helio Castroneves, but the Racer article refutes this, saying Lauterbach got her info from Damada and Newman Haas's other driver, Christian Fittipaldi. Dr. Olvey goes to Team Green's garage, where Paul Tracy's car, the fastest on Saturday, sits. Their computer shows that Tracy was experiencing 3.5 vertical Gs and 5.5 lateral Gs. Dr. Olvey, knowing that the combination of these G-forces are very bad, calls Dr. Richard Jennings, former medical director from NASA, who Olvey describes in his book as the only G-force expert he knew. But Dr. Jennings isn't home. As Dr. Olvey continues to try to reach him, qualifying begins.
Hi and welcome, I'm Paul Page, and we are going to have what I think will be a very interesting afternoon, especially when you consider the speeds that have been raced in the past here at Texas Motor Speedway. The NASCAR trucks, the Busch, the Winston Cup, even IRL, all of them at least 11 miles an hour slower than CART has practiced throughout this weekend. So in many ways, Parker Johnstone, I think we're about to see the fastest day in CART history.
Well, this track and these cars are all about speed. Today, we will see history being made as these drivers go faster than anyone's ever gone on a 1.5-mile oval. Now, this morning, during the practice session, I stood on the outside of turn 1, and it took my breath away. It's amazing these cars even stay in the facility. They are going so fast. Qualifying should be awesome.
I'm going to play a lap from Kenny Breck's pole-winning qualifying run, but I'm going to put a lap from Tony Stewart's pole run at a NASCAR race here from 2010, just as a comparison to see what a car that this track was built for does around here.
Breck is going to be looking for a pole here. Best oval was when he qualified last year at Japan, qualified second. at this. Can he hold on to it? Kenny Breck takes over the pole.
Look at that. That's a full 5 seconds difference. An absolutely ludicrous speed. 233.447 miles an hour, to be exact. By the time qualifying ends, Dr. Olvey is still trying to get a hold of Dr. Jennings, but he's still not home. Turns out, Dr. Jennings was en route to the track, and the two run into each other in person. Dr. Olvey finally tells him what's going on, and Dr. Jennings responds by saying that they have a big problem. Dr. Olvey inquires as to what the problem is, and Dr. Jennings tells him that running a race with this level of sustained G-forces is physiologically impossible. Dr. Olvey relays this information to Wally Dallenbach and CART CEO Joe Heitzler, and pretty soon they have a room full of drivers in what Marshall Pruitt characterizes as something approximating a mass intervention. Dr. Olvey asked the drivers for a show of hands. How many of them have experienced dizziness, trouble with balance, or a similar issue after getting out of the car this weekend? A few minutes go by, with nobody wanting to be the first to admit to a perceived weakness. But when one hand goes up, another follows, and pretty soon, most of the room is admitted to feeling these issues. One driver, who goes unnamed by Dr. Olvey, admits to experiencing a momentary loss of consciousness for the better part of a lap, pulling into the pits because he thought he was having a stroke. Again from Dr. Olvey's book, just 2 drivers stated that they never experienced any symptoms. Cross-referencing this with a Racer article, they would appear to be Scott Dixon and Kenny Breck, though some people believe it was Paul Tracy rather than Dixon. The rest of the field have all felt at least some adverse effects of excessive G-forces. Despite the fact that most of the drivers are still willing to race, the series has decided that the event can't proceed without something changing, and all of the options that were floated weren't feasible to implement within the narrow time frame before the green flag. Changes to the track or to the cars would all require some form of testing, and there's no time to test anything. The engines could be detuned, but the engine manufacturers aren't willing to mess with the motors. The discussion on what to do lasts deep into the night. A few hours earlier, the IRL raced at Atlanta Motor Speedway, a track nearly identical to Texas, where a fiery crash took out 11 cars. Thankfully, the only serious injury was a concussion suffered by Jack Miller. AutoWeek described the wreck as a nightmare, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone involved in the saga at Texas dozed off and saw something like this in their dreams. Open-wheel racing would never return to Atlanta, an ominous sign on the eve of a race that's looking to be even more dangerous. Close to midnight, no decision has been made. By now, it's guaranteed that tens of thousands of fans will arrive at Texas Motor Speedway in the morning for a race that likely won't be run. As the track opens for the fans at 10 a.m. on Sunday, morning warm-up has been canceled. In the Racer article, new Chief Steward Chris Neifel recalls a conversation with Joe Heitzler, in which Joe asks what would happen if they just raced, to which Chris replies that if something went wrong, it would be the equivalent of a plane crash. CART's VP of competition, Mike Zizzo, tells Joe that if a driver was killed in a crash in a race, that CART would be no more. The decision is final. There will be no race.
It's disappointing, but yet necessary for me to announce that CART, along with its teams, its drivers, its manufacturers and sponsors, have determined that we must postpone today's race.
A situation developed on Friday of this weekend that in the 25 years I've been involved with motorsports, I have never heard of and have never seen at any other racing venue.
20-some years of auto racing, I've never experienced what I was experiencing out there this weekend. The G-forces that were put on our body were way beyond what I could even imagine. And I at this point, I got to really applaud CART and Joe Heitzler and everybody in CART organization to stand up for the drivers and the safety.
The fans, and Eddie Gossage, the man in charge of the speedway, were pissed. The track sued CART over the cancellation and would receive millions of dollars in a settlement toward the end of the year. The series' reputation and its wallet were damaged, and any fan that tuned in for the first time because of Driven didn't get to see a lap. Though I'm not sure if anyone tuned in for the first time because of Driven. The movie sits today at 13% on Rotten Tomatoes, and though by my rough estimate around 2 million people saw it on opening weekend alone, it's largely forgotten today. but it is notable for having a strikingly similar overarching plot to 2025's F1 movie. The graph of CART's stock that I have displayed here is month by month, so it's not the most detailed in the world. As this much more zoomed-in graph from Yahoo Finance shows, the stock had been climbing high until the Texas weekend before tumbling back down. CART's stock would never again reach the heights it did in late April 2001. Have you ever tried looking up information about old delisted stocks? It's so needlessly difficult. If you want to learn more about the Texas debacle, I encourage you to read the Racer article that I keep bringing up. It's 3 parts, they're all in the description, and it goes much further in depth covering the story of the Firestone Firehawk 600. But our story is far from over. When the CART circus packed up and left Fort Worth, I'm sure it was a relief. The series got back to normal at Nazareth, where Scott Dixon scored his first career win. Soon after came the Indy 500, where Team Penske joined Ganassi in moving to the IRL for one race only, as well as winning that one race. Penske would resign from CART's board of directors and sell his remaining stock in the series, raising some concerns about his long-term commitment to CART, but there's no clear indication yet that he would jump ship to the IRL full-time for 2002. The rhythm of the season was almost enough to make one forget about all the hullabaloo behind the scenes, and with 6 races to go, Gil de Ferran led Helio Castroneves in the standings by 5 points as CART prepared for their first European race, to be held on September 15th, 2001.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
The September 11th attacks brought the entirety of America to a standstill, and sports were no exception. NASCAR postponed their New Hampshire race to the day after Thanksgiving. Major League Baseball postponed 91 games, pushing the World Series back into November for the first time. Even the mighty NFL postponed all of Week 2 until the end of the regular season, moving the whole postseason back, and like the World Series, pushing the Super Bowl into a new month for the first time. No major sport in America went on as scheduled in the week after 9/11. But CART isn't in America right now.
These racing teams are frustrated and torn. They want to come home, but can't. Even calling home is difficult. The German people have been wonderfully supportive. There have been many spontaneous moments of caring, vigils, letters addressed to the American people. Small memorials are everywhere. The teams can't go home. So, with very conflicted emotions, they will race. Race for these wonderful German fans. And race to prove terrorism will not prevail.
The German 500, hastily renamed the American Memorial, is a logistical nightmare. Michael Andretti was still in the US on September 11th and just barely made it to Germany in time for the green flag on Saturday. Many team owners, including Penske and Ganassi, as well as ESPN reporter Jan Beekes, never made it to the track at all. ESPN opted not to air the race live, postponing the broadcast by 2 days out of respect for the victims of 9/11. German television, however, would air the race live. Kenny Breck led the first 63 laps with ease until Bruno Junqueira cuts down on him into turn 1.
Whoa! Breck's in trouble! And he catches it, loses it again!
Watch it. There you go. You're okay. Get back on the track. Let's go. There you go. Go.
Well, it gets a yellow, though.
Pack up and blend. You're going to be okay.
It gets a yellow.
Thanks to his brilliant save, he only lost 1 spot to Patrick Carpentier. Patrick holds first place until lap 95, when Tony Kanaan passes him in turn 1, and Tony's teammate Alex Zanardi takes second in turn 2.
Well, we're not doing anything different than we've done at any other race, so maybe the bad setup we had and the rest of the circuits works on this one.
The Morris Nunn Racing teammates have posted the 10 fastest laps so far in the race, but they lose the lead during a lengthy pit cycle. When it concludes on lap 124, Zanardi inherits the lead ahead of Kanaan and Breck. With 1 pit stop left in the 500-kilometer race, it's looking like it'll come down to these 3. With 14 laps left, Tony Kanaan heads onto pit road for a final splash of fuel. As he pulls away, his crew tells him over the radio to go like hell. A lap later, Alex Zanardi follows him in from the lead.
Zanardi's in, you're looking at the numbers, he jumps on the brakes.
Servia can make it to the end. He's got to go 40 laps, but he's been the fuel mileage king today. I'm not so sure about Andretti and the rest, but we know Servia can. So they're looking for Andretti and Servia on their way out. We'll see how this blends in.
Nice stop.
It was 5.3 seconds on my clock. Kanans was 6.4. Now they've got to go to work. We're going to head for the Rahal land and see what the story is for Kenny Brack.
As Zanardi exits pit road, something happens off screen and he loses control of the car. Unlike Breck in the same corner earlier, Alex's car is too far gone, and he can't save it. His car slowly slides onto the racetrack and directly into the path of Alex Tagliani, who's going an estimated 200 miles an hour.
Breck picks up the lead. Oh, and Zanardi, with a terrible crash.
In race announcer Paul Page's memoir, he describes how ESPN handled the situation. They promised that they would not air footage of the crash or Zanardi being extracted from the car, promises which were both broken. They also asked Page to pre-film a segment announcing Zanardi's death for the tape-delayed broadcast in the event that it became necessary. Page refused to do this. At the scene of the accident, Dr. Terry Trammell had to pull the belt off a safety worker's pants to use as a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. Zanardi is airlifted to a trauma center in Berlin, and he barely survives the helicopter ride there, having lost 3/4 of his blood by the time he reaches the hospital. After a lengthy surgery, the doctors were unable to save his legs, but they do save his life. On the tape-delayed ESPN broadcast, the race abruptly ends, skipping through the final few laps, which were all run under yellow, before cutting to a news report on how Zanardi lost his legs. By the time this airs, the news of the crash has already spread far and wide. In Germany, as previously mentioned, the race aired live, and after the wreck, the broadcast team immediately cut to the studio, where the following was said. We explained at the start of this program why we are broadcasting this race, although internally our discussions were split, because we were incredibly worried about seeing what we have just seen. Injuries, serious injuries in motorsport, are not the pictures one wants to see in the current climate, and which we do not want to show. We explained we're showing this as the Americans wanted us to show it, and they decided they were going to run the race, and they wanted us to be with them, by their side. We stood by their side. We have shown the race up until now. Now we will, despite perhaps ratings-grabbing pictures, opt against showing a badly injured driver. At this moment, having seen what we didn't want to see under any circumstances, we are stopping our broadcast. I hope you understand this decision. I thank you for your interest, and we will show you later what has happened with Alex Zanardi. I really hope it's not as bad as it appears. Thank you for your understanding. Goodbye. The German broadcast concludes before Kenny Brack takes the yellow and checkered flags. Mercifully, the rest of the season comes and goes without major incident. Gilles de Ferran wins the championship by 36 points over Kenny Brack, and Team Penske claims their 9th kart championship. When the celebrations subside, kart's most pivotal moment of the year, even greater than the 2 flashpoints that took a hammer to their reputation, has arrived. Marlboro wasn't allowed to put their logos on Penske's cars at Indianapolis due to a law prohibiting tobacco companies from advertising in more than one racing series, and as I said before, sponsors want to race at Indy. Philip Morris also isn't pleased with the European expansion, as the focus with their advertising in kart is to reach the American market. This, combined with Penske's sale of kart stock mid-year, and kart dropping tracks that the captain has a financial stake in, all came to a head in early December, when the announcement is made. For 2002, Roger Penske is leaving kart to join the IRL.